Hey there, and thanks for joining us for this pilot episode of Driving with Doug. What we're doing today is we are going out just to do a bit of a proof of concept and test some of this equipment that we've been gathering up for getting this little show going. I've been a full driver for ever since I started driving now. I'm a massive fan of all the full drive shows around. And just absolutely love getting out there and seeing this great country. Although I tend to feel like there's just something missing from the modern four-wheel driving scene. That kind of charm that the four-wheel drive shows of the late 80s and 90s had, of just getting out there and exploring the country, but learning about it as well, and learning about the land around us and the traditions and the people and all of those, amazing variations of flora and fauna and everything that we have in the country. Let's get out there and have a look at this great country. Let's go and tour. Let's get to the outback. Let's get to the sea. Let's get to the beach. Let's have a good time. Make some good memories while doing it. And hopefully, those watching at home learn a thing or two about this great country as well. So, thanks for joining us. Stay tuned, and let's go up to Glassy Mountains National Park today. Have a look around, test some of this equipment, just have a bit of fun. Thanks. So today we're headed north out of Brisbane, about an hour's drive to the Glassy Mountains area. It's encompassed by a couple of different state forests, the Birram, the Luttons, the Peachester and the Biawar State Forest areas. Crisscrossed with awesome tracks, you've got to go up north from Brisbane on the Sunshine Coast motorway, and unfortunately, as is any time going up there, it didn't take us long to run into a bunch of traffic. You know what? One day, maybe they'll get these roads right. So we took a bit of a detour and decided it was best that we hit the back roads. Once off the freeway, the traffic opened up a bit and we were able to start covering some ground. Quite a nice scenic drive actually up through here. The forests are really quite green at the moment after all the rain we've had, and it really is quite a nice view. So we're heading into our first stop, which is up at the famous Glassy Mountains Lookout. To get there, you've got to go through Birram Road, the back up here at Birramborough, and you get to come through all these pine plantations. Unfortunately, the roads up here are pretty shit, so you've got to make sure you take your time when you're coming up through here, because there's one way to get into an easy accident. Right, here we are up at the famous Glasshouse Mountains lookout. You get an absolutely fantastic view of all of these Glasshouse Mountains around here. Now, the Glasshouse Mountains were named by Captain Cook in the May of 1770 when he was sailing by the ocean. He saw these glass houses and they reminded him of the glass furnaces back in Yorkshire where he came from, in their shape and the way that they were pictured out over the land. Now, of course, the Glasshouse Mountains have been here for a lot longer than that. They've been here for about 20 million years. And what's really interesting about these mountains is when you look at them, you think, wow, they might actually be like volcano plugs. And you'd be right in that. They are volcano plugs. But if you look around, there's no volcano here anymore. And that's because what they were is these were plugs that actually formed underground as magma tried to make its way to the surface. It solidified. And then over the process of about 20 million years, the land all around here was eroded and washed away, and you actually get left with these plugs that are harder than all of the ground around it, so they poke up out over the terrain in what we see here today. Now, obviously, Captain Cook wasn't the first person to be here, and it's important to acknowledge that we're actually on the land of the Gubbi Gubbi people. And the Gubbi Gubbi people, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's my best go at it, have been using this area for tens of thousands of years as a culturally significant place, and tribes from all around different areas would actually come, gather here, and trade with the local population and the local indigenous people. And this was actually a mecca hub for the indigenous populations all around back before colonisation or invasion of Australia. And it's absolutely fantastic area. Having checked out the lookout, it was time to get underway and have a look around the Glasshouse Mountains area. This place is absolutely littered with dirt tracks, ranging from nice little touring roads up to some of the most extreme four-wheel drive tracks you'll find in the country. Fortunately, most of it's ring-roaded and gazetted by these really quite good dirt roads. They can be a little rough at times, but for touring around through these kind of forest plantation areas, checking out the scenery and having a look to find what's around, they're really good. So if you ever do decide to come up to the Glasshouse Mountains to have a look around, there's two really important things to keep in mind. Is that this whole area is owned by HQ plantations, and oftenly they will close off areas of track like this because of damage to the track. And it's really important that you do respect those boundaries to make sure that when it does dry out, these places reopen for everyone. Another thing to keep in mind if you are coming to the Glasshouse is that this Glasshouse clay is absolutely notorious for getting vehicles stuck. It might look like you're on firm ground. Where I'm standing right now, it looks like a semi-dried out bit of track or shortcut around this muddy section. but I can tell you what, it absolutely is not. This stuff is just complete mush. If you get a vehicle into here, and you don't know what you're doing, or you're not prepared, you're going to have an absolutely awful time, and that's half the reason they close these areas off. Speaking of closing areas off, we didn't have to go far back the other way before we found another popular part of the glass house, somewhere that I used to four-wheel drive a lot when I was younger, had been gated and shut. Unfortunately, more and more tracks in Australia are going away of the dodo, becoming gated and closed to the four-wheel drive community. There's a whole bunch of different reasons for this, but it's got to do mainly with people destroying tracks, people dumping rubbish, and people just leaving a mess everywhere they go. So it's really important that if you want to come and explore these awesome places like the Glasshouse Mountains and all around Brisbane, bring that rubbish bag with you, pick up after you go, report any illegal dumping. Otherwise, we're going to lose more and more great tracks like this. I used to drive this one years ago in the old GQs and Patrols and Land Cruisers, and these were some really awesome tracks. But unfortunately, because of the behaviour of a small percentage of the population, more and more areas like this are getting closed every day. So I did some digging around and I was actually able to find some old footage of these four-wheel drive tracks that have been gated off. And it's really important just to stress, when you are going into these tracks, I'm certainly not saying don't go anywhere in the wet, but it is really important that you respect the tracks and you respect the environment. You don't go in there doing more damage than is necessary, especially when you're dealing with wet terrain in areas like the Glass House where it's super slippery, super muddy, super boggy. Try and be as sensible as possible. If you're going to go up that really hard hill, just put those lockers on. There's no need to go crazy spinning wheels everywhere. If you're looking at dropping into mud pits, just take it easy. Make sure you know what you're getting into before you get into it. And it's little steps like this that'll help keep these places open for four-wheel drive generations to come. So before, when I was talking about the Glasshouse Mountains being volcanic caps that were eroded away from the top, it doesn't take a lot of looking around to see why that would have been the case, because this ground just erodes away straight away with water. There's a track here going up this little hill, and you can see that the water is pooled in here and turned into this absolutely devilish clay that just gets all over your vehicle, and it's super, super easy to get stuck in as well. So if you ever see stuff like this and you're up here at the Glasshouse Mountains, make sure you're taking really good care when you're trying to approach any tracks like this. If you do find your way up here and encounter a really big bog hole like this that you can't get around and you have to go through, there's a couple of things that you might want to do, and you really should do, before you even try and tackle something like this. If it's really bad, you may also even want to attach some recovery gear to your vehicle before going in, so that if you do need to get pulled out, you can do that nice and quickly. You don't have to get too wet, and your car isn't being damaged by water getting inside. Now what you do want to do is you want to absolutely check the depth and the bottom of all of these holes that you come up to. This one hasn't been driven in a while, and I'd say there's probably a pretty good reason for that. So check the depth. In this case, we're looking at probably about 70 centimeters, but that bottom is as soft as anything. Try and get as far in as you can. Now I don't want to fall in and, oh my, that's crap. If you are looking at getting out to places like the Glass House and you want to move a bit more off the beaten track, it really does help to have some basic modifications on your vehicle. I managed to dig up some other footage I had lying around of the Amarok here with just some wheels on after I bought it. No other upgrades, no other aftermarket accessories. And you could see coming up this quite simple slope here that there's almost no ground clearance left under that front axle. If you are looking at exploring areas like the Glass House further, you're really going to want to have a look at some basic upgrades, 2-inch lift kits, make sure you've got some rated recovery points, particularly if you're going to start playing around in the mud, things like winches and side steps, basic modifications that can really help you get a long way in this kind of terrain. With most of the rest of the tracks at the Glass House closed due to the wet weather, it was time to just head out and get to driving, having a looking around and seeing what we could find. There's so many good tracks up here that you could spend all day driving around and you'd never run out of places to go. Well, if you're still with us, thanks for joining us. We had a great time up at Glass House Mountains today, just trying out some of this equipment and testing out some different potential segment styles for the show. So hopefully you'll join us again. It won't be too long, and we'll have our first full-length pilot episode up and ready to go. So stay tuned. We look forward to seeing you next time. We hope you have a great drive. Psst, wait a second. We're not done. You're missing the most important part of any Australian four-wheel drive show. Okay, we will have a cooking segment in the actual show, I swear. Don't judge me.